Sentence structure. It's one of the things I'm asked about all the time as a language teacher because sometimes the way we put words together in a sentence in Portuguese seems to make no sense. As a native English speaker, I definitely struggled with this when I was learning Portuguese until I discovered a really helpful strategy that I want to teach you today. And don't worry, you don't need to be a linguist or even understand complex grammar to be able to do this. If you're excited to learn how this works and finally make mistake-free sentences, then give this video a like and subscribe if you haven't already to get my free weekly tutorials on practical Portuguese in plain English. So the strategy is to look out for sentences that if you translated them word for word in English would sound really bad, like grammatically incorrect. By memorizing this bad English, which will hopefully stick in your head because sometimes it's really funny, you'll be able to remember the equivalent in Portuguese. Let me explain what I mean with an example. To throw a party in Portuguese is fazer uma festa. The verb fazer in Portuguese literally means to make or to do. So you may have heard a Portuguese person, when they're speaking English, say, we're going to make a party. Now, to us in English, that sounds really funny. So hopefully it's going to stick in your head, right? So by remembering that phrase, I can work in the other direction. In Portuguese, I know the verb to make is fazer. So I should say, vamos fazer uma festa. Let's take a look at 6 more examples so you can convert bad English into good Portuguese. Another one that is helpful to remember is around belonging. Have you heard a Portuguese person say, I'm going to the house of my friend? That's because this is how the sentence would be structured in Portuguese. The strategy is making sense now, right? So let's work in the other direction and piece it together in good Portuguese. Vou à casa do meu amigo. You can also talk about a specific person in the same way. Instead of saying Joanna's dog, the Portuguese would say the dog of Joanna. É o cão da Joana. This is the type of very simple grammar that you need to understand from the very beginning of your journey because you genuinely cannot form mistake-free sentences without it. So if you are still lost on the fundamentals of Portuguese grammar, definitely head to the description where I have a free 60-minute lesson for beginners that covers grammar like this, but in a very fun and practical way, as well as pronunciation and how to understand real-life spoken Portuguese. I would love to see you there. Another one when talking about people. Have you heard the Portuguese refer to people as a French, a Spanish? Well, this is because in Portuguese, you don't need to say person like we would in English. I know a Portuguese person, Portuguese man, Portuguese woman. You can simply say, conheço português or conheço uma portuguesa. Talking about objects can also be really confusing because in Portuguese, inanimate objects can be referred to as him and her. They do all have a gender. So you might hear the following when a Portuguese person speaks English. Have you seen my bag? Yes, she is here. So let's translate this word for word to get the correct Portuguese. Viste a minha mala? Sim, ela está aqui. Another one with fazer. Fazer uma pergunta. As we now know, if you were paying attention earlier, fazer is to make, which is why you may have heard the Portuguese say, can I make a question? Posso fazer uma pergunta? Of course, in English, we would say, can I ask a question? But since the verb to ask is perguntar, you wouldn't perguntar a pergunta. So that would be silly. Is this helpful? Give me a yes in the comments if so, and if you can think of any more examples of this strategy in action, then please write them there as well. I would love to hear your ideas. A couple more to finish off then. Prepositions are really tricky words to get right. They are those little words like in, on, at, to, but they don't translate easily from one language to another. So for example, in English, we say, I am thinking about you. But in Portuguese, you will say, estou a pensar em ti, which, if we translated it word for word, feels like it should be, I am thinking in you. So this is something that my students have a really hard time with, and this is one of the strategies I recommend. Remember the bad English translation that you would get if you tried to translate a sentence like this with a preposition word for word. So a fun one to finish off with then. I actually mentioned this one in my conversations about dogs video that I made a while ago. If you have a furry friend, you should definitely check out that video because it is a great way to start conversations in Portuguese. I'll make sure it's linked in the description. So the phrase to pet a dog is fazer festas. Now again, if you are paying attention to the beginning of this video, you will know that this means to throw a party. What? So you can remember this phrase by basically asking somebody, can I make a party with your dog? Posso fazer festas? So will you be using this strategy? I hope that it has given you some ideas and that you are now on the hunt for bad English that will help you speak good Portuguese. Don't forget, if you really want to speak good Portuguese, I have an entire online program and community dedicated to just that. I help people who are relocating or retiring to Portugal to learn practical Portuguese and live Portugal at its best. So if that sounds like you, do not delay. Sign up for my free taster lesson for beginners. It is a link in the description and you'll find out all about how to join us. I'll be back next week with more tips and tutorials in practical Portuguese, so I hope to see you there. Ciao for now.